I'm not the kind of guy who throws pity parties. I've worked with my hands my whole life. Thick skin, quiet mouth, get the job done kind of guy. My name's Thomas. I'm 42, been married for 17 years, and I've got a 14-year-old son named Kyle who used to think I hung the moon. Used to. These days, he barely looks up from his phone unless his controller dies or the Wi-Fi cuts out. But I get it. He's a teenager. Hormones, friends, whatever. I remember being his age and thinking I knew everything. But back then, even when I was a punk kid with a smart mouth, I still said thanks when someone handed me a gift. Especially when that someone worked double shifts to afford it. My wife, Karen, not a nickname. That's her actual name. Used to be sweet. She was the kind of woman who'd rub my shoulders while I was half asleep in front of the TV and leave sticky notes in my lunchbox with things like, "You've got this," or "Miss you already." That version of her, though, started fading around year 9 of our marriage. I don't know what did it exactly. Maybe it was the stress of the bills, or the fact that I'm not the most romantic guy in the world. Or maybe she just outgrew me. Whatever the reason, little by little, the affection dried up. At first, I told myself it was just a phase. Marriage goes through dry spells, right? But this wasn't just a dry spell, it was a drought. It started small. She stopped packing my lunches. No big deal. Then the sticky notes vanished. Then it was dinner alone at the table because she'd already eaten with Kyle. I'd come home to a quiet house, dishes in the sink, and my son locked in his room with his headset on, screaming at strangers online. I still kissed her goodnight. She stopped turning her head to meet it. Now I'm not some lovesick puppy. I know life isn't a movie, but you'd expect at least a little bit of respect from the people you're killing yourself for, right? I leave the house by 6:30 every morning to get to the construction site. Rain, snow, doesn't matter. I bust my back all day, come home sore and covered in sawdust, and all I get is, "You forgot to pick up paper towels." Not even a "how was your day?" Not even eye contact half the time. But I kept pushing through. Because that's what dads do. We carry the weight. We don't complain. We just keep going. Until my birthday, November 2nd. I wasn't expecting balloons or anything. I'm not 10 years old. I just figured maybe Karen would make my favorite dinner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and that chocolate pie she used to bake every year without fail. Or maybe Kyle would pause his game long enough to at least say, "Happy birthday, Dad." Honestly, a simple card and a "we love you" would have done it. I would have been fine with just that. Instead, I walked into a quiet house. No smell of dinner. No decorations. Karen was sitting on the couch in sweats, scrolling through her phone. Kyle had his headphones on, eyes glued to the screen. The TV volume was up loud enough that I could hear gunfire and shouting from the hallway. Karen glanced up. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied. I waited. Nothing. I looked over at Kyle. He didn't even blink. I cleared my throat. "So, anything going on today?" Karen furrowed her brow like she was trying to remember something. Then she stood up, walked over to the dining table, and picked up a small white envelope. "Oh, right," she said. "Almost forgot." She handed it to me with one hand, still holding her phone in the other. I opened it slowly, thinking maybe this was just her playing it cool. Like, maybe inside was a gift card to that fishing shop I love. Or maybe some note that would show she still remembered the guy I used to be. Inside was a card. No cartoon or funny picture on the front. Just plain gray with silver letters, "Happy birthday." I opened it. Inside, in Karen's handwriting, it said, "Thanks for paying the bills. That's all you're good for." I stared at it. I read it twice. My hands didn't shake. My face didn't twist. I just stood there, holding it. Then I heard it. Kyle snorted. A full-on chuckle. I looked up. He'd taken his headset off and was laughing. "Mom, that's savage," he said. "That's cold. You really wrote that." She smirked. "Well, I thought it was funny." I looked back down at the card. Then at the empty kitchen. No cake. No dinner. Not even a candle. "Is there cake or?" I asked. Karen shrugged. "There's a leftover slice of cheesecake from Kyle's birthday. You can have that if you want." I walked to the fridge in silence, took out the cheesecake slice that had someone else's name written on the box, sat at the kitchen table, and ate it with a plastic fork. The card lay face down beside me. Kyle went back to his game. Karen turned the volume back up on her phone. No one said another word. I waited until the cake was gone. Then I stood up, took the trash out to the bin in the cold November air, and came back inside. My knees cracked. My back ached. I rubbed my hands on my jeans and stared at the living room. Karen didn't even look up. Kyle was laughing into his headset again. I didn't say a word. That night, while they slept, I packed a small duffel bag. Just clothes, my wallet, and a few things that actually mattered to me, like the photo of my dad fishing with me when I was 12 and the old pocket knife he gave me before he passed. I took one last look around the room. The silence was louder than ever. Then I walked out the front door and didn't look back. For 3 weeks, I didn't tell anyone where I went. I didn't answer texts. I didn't post anything online. I stayed in a cheap motel near the lake and took up extra work on a renovation project out of town. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel lonely, it feels earned. Until last night. Around 11 p.m., I got a text from my boss, Rick. The guy owns the contracting company I work for. He's known Karen in passing. Met her at a few office parties and barbecues over the years. He's a good man. Doesn't stir drama. The text just said, "She's here. She's crying. Do you want me to tell her where you went?" And just like that, the peace shattered. I haven't replied. Not yet. Because now, I'm wondering, why is she crying? Why now? And more importantly, what exactly does she want? I stared at Rick's message for a long time. She's here. She's crying. Do you want me to tell her where you went? It buzzed in my hand like it was alive, vibrating with something more than just words. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the motel room. Part of me wanted to call her, scream, demand an answer. But mostly, I just sat there on the edge of the stiff motel bed, feeling empty. I hadn't told Rick anything about why I left. Just that I needed some time off, that I'd take the weekend cruise shift on the lake house remodel 2 towns over. He didn't ask questions. I think he could see the weight in my eyes. Guys like Rick, old school, raised on handshake deals and early mornings, don't need much explanation. They just know. But now she was at his office, crying. And that really confused me. Because the woman who watched me eat birthday cake alone at our kitchen table like I was a guest in my own home, the woman who gave me a card that might as well have been a slap to the face, that woman didn't seem like the type to cry about me walking out. She seemed like she wouldn't even notice. Unless, of course, something had changed. Or someone had said something. I didn't text Rick back. I just turned the phone face down, turned off the motel lamp, and lay back in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The air was thick with silence, the kind that presses against your ribs. I'd felt this kind of silence before. Once at my father's funeral, once in the hospital waiting room when Kyle was born, and now here, alone, floating in the space between what used to be and what comes next. And while I lay there, my mind started rewinding. Not just to the birthday, but to all the little moments before it. Moments I hadn't let myself feel until now. And when I pieced them all together, I realized the disrespect didn't start on November 2nd. It started long before. Let me back up. Last summer, we went on a family trip to Myrtle Beach. It was supposed to be this big reset moment. Karen planned it, Kyle packed his own bag, and I took off work early to drive us there. I paid for the Airbnb, the gas, the food, the tickets to the stupid Ripley's Museum Kyle insisted on visiting. All of it. And I didn't complain once. That's what dads do, right? We provide. But the whole trip felt off. Karen barely looked at me. Kyle had his AirPods in 90% of the time. We went to a seafood place the second night, and while we waited for the food, Kyle said, "Mom, remember when we came here just the 2 of us? That was way more fun." I blinked. When was that? Karen didn't even flinch. Last spring break. Your schedule was full, so we went without you. No apology. No guilt. Just a casual bombshell dropped over hush puppies and fried shrimp. Then Kyle piled on. It was awesome. Just me and Mom. We actually did stuff, not like now. And Karen just laughed. Like it was funny. Like it wasn't a gut punch. That was the first time I really felt it. That feeling of being replaced. Not cheated on, not exactly. But replaced. As if I was slowly being phased out of my own family. After the trip, it got worse. Karen started making big family plans without telling me. I'd come home from work and find out they had gone out to dinner, just the 2 of them. Kyle's school events. She'd go alone. I wasn't invited. And when I asked, I always got the same answer. "We figured you were tired from work." At first, I tried to believe her. But over time, it became clear this wasn't about my fatigue. It was about my absence making things easier for them. Quieter. Less effort. One night, I found Kyle sitting at the kitchen counter, typing something on his laptop. I walked in and gave him a pat on the shoulder. "What are you working on, bud?" He barely looked up. "An essay. Need help?" "No." I leaned over. "What's the topic?" A person who inspires me. I smiled. Nice. Who'd you pick? He turned the screen slightly, so I could see. The essay started with, "My mom is the strongest person I know. She does everything in our house and never gets enough credit." I waited, reading. No mention of me. Not even a sentence. "She does everything, huh?" I said, keeping my tone light. Kyle shrugged. "Well, yeah." And that was it. That was the moment I realized my own kid thought I did nothing. Like I was just some background character in his life, passing through with a paycheck and a tired sigh. I started watching more closely after that. Karen would correct me in front of him. Constantly. If I told him to do the dishes, she'd say, "He's tired, Thomas. He had a long day." If I said no to something, she'd say yes behind my back. One time I grounded him for mouthing off, and the next morning, he was gone. She'd taken him to the movies as a reward for being honest. That's when Kyle stopped listening to me entirely. He'd roll his eyes when I spoke. Grunt responses. And if I ever raised my voice, even slightly, Karen would swoop in with that tone, sharp and protective. "Don't yell at him, Thomas." I wasn't yelling. I was trying to be a father. But in that house, there was no room for that. I became the bank, the driver, the trash guy, the man who paid for the water bill and turned invisible when the faucet ran. One night in September, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Karen was in the living room with her sister, Jenna. They didn't know I was home early. Karen said, "Honestly, I don't even feel married anymore. It's like living with a roommate who pays for everything but brings nothing to the table emotionally." Jenna said, "Then why not just leave?" Karen laughed. "Because I like my life. The house, the stability. And Kyle needs college money." I stood in the hallway, frozen. That wasn't just disrespect. That was calculation. That was using me. After that night, I stopped asking questions. I stopped reaching out. I started planning. But still, I held out hope. Stupid, stubborn hope. Until the birthday. Until that card. Until Kyle laughed in my face like I was a joke. And now she was crying? Now, I picked up my phone again and stared at Rick's message. I didn't respond. Instead, I scrolled through my texts. Nothing from Karen. Nothing from Kyle. Not even a "where are you?" Just silence. Until this morning. A new message. From an unknown number. "You need to come back. Kyle's scared. Please, Thomas." That stopped me cold. Because she never called me Thomas when she was being real. She always said Tom, or babe, or nothing at all. This was different. I hesitated. Then I called the number. Karen picked up on the first ring. "Hello," she said, breathless. "Tom? Oh my God, you answered." I didn't say anything. I didn't know where you went. I've been going crazy. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? I took a breath. You didn't seem like you'd care. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "I know." I waited. No excuses. No anger. Just that one admission. "I messed up," she said. "I really did." I stayed quiet. She went on. "Kyle's been acting out. He threw something at the wall yesterday. He screamed at me. Said I ruined everything. He blames me for you leaving." I blinked. "He said that?" "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. I told him we could handle things without you. That we'd be okay. But then I found him crying in his room. He said he missed you." My throat tightened. "Karen, that card you gave me." "I know," she said quickly. "I know. It was supposed to be a joke. A bad one. I thought you'd laugh. I didn't mean it. You didn't even say happy birthday." "I know." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. "You made me feel like a stranger in my own home," I said quietly. "You turned my own son against me." "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean to. But you did." I heard her start to cry. The kind of raw, ugly crying that only comes when someone finally sees the wreckage they caused. But I didn't feel pity. I felt something else. Something colder. Something quieter. I looked out the motel window at the lake glinting in the distance, the reflection of the rising sun cutting through the mist. Then I said, "Tell Kyle I'll call him." And I hung up. I knew then that the time for talking was over. Because what Karen didn't know yet was that I'd already met with a lawyer, and I wasn't coming back empty-handed. For the first time in 17 years, I woke up without someone else's expectations pulling me out of bed. No list of chores waiting. No passive-aggressive comments echoing down the hallway. No cold shoulders. Just a cheap motel ceiling, the faint sound of birds outside, and the scratchy warmth of a blanket I didn't share with anyone. I laid there for a while, staring up at nothing. The kind of staring where your thoughts move slowly, like fog over water. There was a heaviness in my chest. Yeah, but under it, something else. Not peace. Not yet. But something close. Like the first inhale after holding your breath underwater for too long. I didn't know who I was without them. Not really. That was the scariest part. Because for nearly 2 decades, I had built my entire identity around being a husband and father. That was my badge. My whole sense of worth came from showing up, paying the bills, fixing the leaking sink at midnight, giving up new work boots so my kid could have the new Xbox, smiling through things that hurt, because that's what dads do. So when I walked out, I didn't just leave a house. I left myself behind. At least, the version of me they knew. The version they depended on, disrespected, and slowly whittled down until there was nothing left but a ghost with a toolbox and a bank account. And for a while, I felt like that ghost. The first week away, I barely spoke. I'd go to the lake house project with Rick and the crew, hammer and drill through the day, come back sore, shower under lukewarm motel water, and then sit in silence until I fell asleep. No TV, no music, no calls. I didn't want distraction. I wanted stillness. Because when your entire life falls apart, you need to hear the sound of the pieces hitting the floor. That's how you figure out what's worth picking up. The motel was small, but clean. It had one of those old vending machines with faded buttons and prices that hadn't changed since 2009. There was a diner next door where the waitress, Eileen, called everyone honey and remembered my order after the second visit. Black coffee, 3 eggs, sourdough toast, and bacon, extra crispy. She never asked why I was there alone. But I think she knew. Old school people like her don't need details. They just give you a smile, a refill, and space to breathe. By the end of the second week, I started writing again. Not anything fancy, just notes, thoughts. A few pages a night. Stuff I hadn't let myself admit out loud. Stuff like, I was a good dad. I wasn't perfect, but I showed up. That should have counted for something. And I miss Kyle. But not the version Karen shaped him into. I miss the kid who used to fall asleep on my chest watching monster truck videos. And maybe the hardest one to write. It wasn't all her fault. I let it happen. I stayed quiet too long. I made myself small. There was power in those words. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But power. That third week, Rick offered me a permanent supervisor role at the site. Said I'd been doing good work, keeping things ahead of schedule. That I seemed more focused lately. You've got leadership in you, he said, clapping me on the back with those heavy hands of his. Don't waste it hiding in the background. It hit me then. How many years I'd spent dimming my own light just so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable. How often I'd said, whatever you want, babe, or it's fine, I'll take care of it, just to keep the peace. But peace without respect isn't peace. It's quiet control. So I took the promotion. And with the extra pay, I moved out of the motel and into a small 1-bedroom rental a few streets away. Nothing fancy. Just 4 walls, a working heater, and a porch with enough space for a chair and a cup of coffee. And for the first time in years, that was mine. Every nail, every picture frame, every mug in the cabinet, it belonged to me. No shared closet. No weird tension in the air. Just quiet. And not the suffocating kind, either. The kind that feels like healing. I set up a tiny workspace in the corner by the window, bought a secondhand desk, a lamp, and started sketching again. Blueprints, small designs, ideas for projects I never had time for. When Kyle was a kid, we used to build birdhouses together. I found the old notebook where we'd scribbled out plans. Pages stained with hot chocolate and markers. It made me smile, but it also made something ache deep in my chest. I missed my son. Not the teenager who mocked me at the table. Not the kid who laughed when his mom handed me that cruel card. But the little boy who used to ride on my shoulders at the state fair, sticky hands clutching cotton candy, pointing at rides and asking, "Can we, Dad? Just one more." That boy was still in there somewhere. I just didn't know if he'd ever come back. 2 days after I moved into the new place, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a drawing. Sloppy, uneven lines, colored with heavy hand pressure. A big tree, a man with a beard, a kid holding a fishing pole, and in the corner, the words, "I'm sorry. I was mean. I love you, Dad." It was signed, Kyle. Age 6. I know I'm 14, but I wish I could go back. I must have sat there for 10 minutes, holding that piece of paper like it was glass. It broke something in me, but not in a bad way. More like the final crack before a shell falls away. The next day, I called him. He picked up on the first ring. Dad. His voice cracked like he didn't expect me to actually call. Hey, buddy. Silence. Then, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything at first. I just listened to his breathing. Then I said, me too. He sniffled. Mom said you're mad at us. I didn't want to dump the weight on him. I wasn't going to turn this into a blame game. He was just a kid. But I wasn't going to lie either. I'm not mad, I said. But I needed space. Sometimes, when people get hurt over and over, they need time to figure out what to do next. Do you hate me? That shattered me. No, I said quickly. Never. Not for a second. He was quiet again. Then he asked, can I see you? I told him I'd think about it. That I needed a little more time, but that I'd call again soon. He said okay, and we said goodbye. And when I hung up, I cried. Not the angry kind. Not the tired kind. The kind that comes when hope finally slips back in through a crack in the door you thought was sealed forever. Later that week, I met with the lawyer again. Her name was Sharon, mid-50s, smart eyes, no-nonsense tone. I reviewed the finances, she said. You've got a strong case. Especially with the documentation you've kept, joint accounts, text messages, and the evidence of emotional neglect. If you want to proceed, we can file the initial motion next week. I nodded. What about custody? I asked. She folded her hands. Given Kyle's age, the court will consider his preferences. But the good news is, you're stable. Employed. No history of violence or substance abuse. The fact that you left quietly instead of blowing up at the house will work in your favor. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. What are you hoping for, Thomas? That question hung in the air for a moment. I don't want to destroy her, I said. I just want fairness. I want to be a father again. I want to stop being treated like a walking ATM. Sharon nodded. Then let's start rebuilding that. And that's what I did. One piece at a time. I got a gym membership, just a small local place down the block. Started lifting again, jogging on the treadmill. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed to feel strong again. In my own body. In my own skin. I stopped checking Karen's socials. Stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. Stopped wondering how long I could have held on. Because the truth was, I already had. Longer than most would have. But every man has his line. Mine was a card. A slice of cheesecake with someone else's name on it. A laugh from a son who didn't know he'd just cracked his father's heart wide open. And now? Now I was rising. Not fast. Not loud. Quietly. Like a tree growing through concrete. Strong. Steady. Unstoppable. It's strange, the way clarity settles in. Not like a lightning strike, but more like sunrise. Gradual. Gentle. Undeniable. That's how I felt walking out of Sharon's office after our third meeting. The fall breeze stung my cheeks. The air crisp with that sharp November scent. Part wood smoke, part dry leaves, part something nostalgic you can't quite name. The sun had dipped low behind the rooftops, painting everything gold. And as I tightened my jacket and headed toward my truck, I realized something deep in my bones. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I was when I first left. Anger burns fast. It's a flare. It can push you out the door, sure, but it won't keep you walking. What kept me going wasn't rage. It was something colder, quieter. Resolve. And the first rule of revenge, I figured, was simple. Never act out of spite. That's how you get sloppy. That's how you tip your hand. But if you act with purpose, with patience, that's when it becomes something else. Justice. That night, back at my little rental, I spread every document I had across the kitchen table. Bank statements, credit card bills, insurance policies, even old emails. I kept everything from the last 10 years, and now, for the first time, I looked at it all with open eyes. Karen's name was everywhere. Every account, every purchase. Shoes, spa days, concert tickets. She lived like someone who had nothing to lose, because she assumed I'd always catch her. But I wasn't the net anymore. And that terrified her. Rick stopped by that weekend to drop off some spare tools I'd left at the job site. He's not the chatty type, but as he stood in my doorway, hand on the doorframe, he gave me a look I hadn't seen before. Respect. Like he saw the man behind the silence. You settling in? He asked. I nodded. Getting there. He scratched his chin. You ever think about going independent? That caught me off guard. What, like freelance? Contracting, he said. I've seen your designs. Your site management. The way the crew listens when you talk. You've got more in you than you know. I didn't say anything at first. Just looked around my small, quiet place. And I felt it. Possibility. Not the wishful kind. The kind that stares you down and dares you to step up. I'll think about it, I said. He handed me a folder. Start with this. One of my old clients owns a bunch of lake properties. Wants someone reliable to remodel the entire portfolio. I told him about you. I took the folder. Thanks, Rick. He shrugged. Just don't forget us little guys when you're rich. I smiled for the first time in what felt like months. Later that night, I opened the folder. Inside were blueprints, project scopes, budgets, all clean, manageable. More than that, it was a doorway. And for the first time, I wanted to walk through it not just to escape something, but to build something new. But before I could build anything, I had to tear a few things down. Because there were still debts owed. Not money. Respect. Dignity. Truth. And if Karen thought she could cry in front of my boss, spin a story, and reel me back into her web with a few sniffles and a "Kyle misses you," she was about to learn something important. I wasn't the same man who walked out with nothing but a duffel bag and an aching heart. I was sharper now, and I had a plan. The first piece fell into place 2 days later. I filed a petition with Sharon for a formal separation, initiating the division of assets and legal custody discussions. Karen hadn't filed anything. Maybe she was waiting for me to come crawling back. Maybe she thought the silence was temporary. Either way, she wasn't ready. That was step 1, control the narrative. Step 2 was more delicate. I needed Kyle to see the truth, not from a place of bitterness, but clarity. I wasn't going to badmouth his mother. That would only backfire. But I could show him who I really was. So I called him again. Invited him over. Just for a few hours. He was hesitant at first. Karen was, too. She texted me. He's not ready. Don't confuse him. But I wasn't asking permission. When Kyle showed up, he looked different. Not physically. He still had that shaggy hair and oversized hoodie. But something in his face was softer. More uncertain. Like he wasn't sure who I was anymore, or if he was allowed to miss me. I made us burgers. Nothing fancy, just how he liked them. Extra pickles. Toasted buns. I didn't ask about school. I didn't pry. I just talked. Told him about the projects I was working on. Showed him the sketches. Let him help me stain an old workbench I'd picked up from the flea market. Halfway through sanding the edge, he said, I remember when we built that birdhouse. You let me use the hammer even though Mom said I'd smash my fingers. I laughed. You did smash your fingers. He grinned. Yeah, but it was cool. And in that moment, he looked like my son again. Not the one Karen had molded into a mini version of her cold indifference. The one who used to trust me. We didn't talk about the birthday, or the card, or the night I left. We didn't have to. I let him leave with the birdhouse. Told him he could paint it however he wanted. He smiled. Said he'd come back next weekend if I was free. That was step 3, rebuild the bridge. One board at a time. And then came step 4, the setup. I started attending small business workshops at the local community center. Quietly, anonymously. I learned how to register an LLC, how to handle contracts, how to protect my work legally. I even hired a freelance graphic designer to make a logo. Thomas Green Renovations. Clean. Sharp. Mine. I kept my profile low. No social media. No announcements. I didn't want Karen to catch wind. Not yet. Let her think I was licking wounds, sleeping on couches, stuck in limbo. Meanwhile, I was networking with other contractors. Lining up 3, 4, 5 jobs. Enough to carry me through spring. Enough to make a statement. Then I met with Sharon again. Are you sure you want to push this now? She asked. You've got the momentum. But it will get messy. I know, I said. But I need the truth on paper. So we filed the next round. A motion requesting joint custody with equal physical time and a detailed financial audit of the last 2 years of household spending. That last part? That was the match. Because Karen had been dipping into savings I hadn't touched in months. Clothes. Subscriptions. A spa membership I didn't even know she had. Thousands of dollars. She hadn't just pushed me out emotionally. She was bleeding me financially, too. And now? She'd have to explain it to the court. That was step 5. Expose the cracks. I didn't relish the idea of dragging it through lawyers. I didn't want Kyle caught in the middle. But I also wasn't going to let myself be erased. I had rebuilt myself. Brick by brick. And now the foundation was solid. So when Karen finally called, her voice sharp, brittle, shaking beneath the surface, I was ready. You filed for separation? She hissed. You're auditing me? Correct. This is vindictive, Thomas. No. It's necessary. For what? You think this makes you the better parent? No, I said calmly. but it makes me the present one. Silence. Then, venom. You're punishing me. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. And Kyle. From the version of you that forgot how to be a partner. She started to say something else, but I hung up. That conversation wasn't for her benefit. It was for mine. The final piece fell into place a week later. Kyle showed up again, this time with a box of old photos. I found these, he said. Mom was going to throw them out. I told her no. Inside were snapshots from years ago, camping trips, birthday parties, Sunday mornings on the couch with cartoons. One showed me carrying Kyle on my back, both of us laughing. Can I stay the night? He asked. I didn't answer with words, just opened the door wider and smiled. And as he walked in, I realized something. The revenge wasn't about making Karen hurt. It was about making sure she never held that kind of power again. It was about taking my story back. And I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The storm came quietly, not with screaming matches or broken dishes. No courtroom theatrics. No late-night calls filled with guilt or begging. Just a steady unraveling. One quiet step after another, until everything Karen had taken for granted began to slip through her fingers. And I didn't raise my voice once. It started with the custody mediation. I arrived early. Pressed shirt, clean jeans, a folder of documentation in hand. Kyle wasn't present. That part would come later. But I knew what I was walking into. Karen would be posturing, trying to spin a narrative where I was the villain, the deserter, the emotionally distant husband who cracked under pressure. But what she hadn't planned for was how calm I'd be. She wore a muted gray dress, hair done neatly, makeup just subtle enough to say, "See, I'm the stable one." Her lawyer, a man who looked like he majored in intimidation, flanked her with a tablet and a smug expression. Sharon sat beside me, steady, focused. She slid a binder across the table. Inside, 2 years of bank records, itemized. Every dollar Karen spent. Her spa charges, boutique runs, and emergency credit card payments to a salon 2 towns over. Copies of texts. Her signed acknowledgement of joint savings. And next to it, a clean spreadsheet of my income and Kyle's expenses, all organized, highlighted, accountable. Karen's lawyer frowned. Karen's jaw tightened. I didn't gloat. Didn't even smirk. I just said, I'd like shared custody. A consistent schedule. Week on, week off. No child support, just equal responsibility. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Given that the child resides full-time with Mrs. Green. Temporarily, Sharon cut in. Due only to Mr. Green's voluntary relocation while de-escalating an emotionally unsafe domestic environment, which we've documented thoroughly. They tried to pivot. Said Kyle's schooling might suffer. That routine matters. That my work hours weren't predictable. But Sharon was ready. She handed over Kyle's own words. His letter, the birdhouse photo, his school counselor's note confirming he'd asked to talk about his missing dad. And of course, Kyle's own voicemail, saved on my phone, where he'd said, I want to be with Dad more. Mom's always mad now. That voicemail alone shifted the air in the room. Karen looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. Not the man she used to ignore. Not the man she reduced to a joke in a birthday card. But someone else. Someone rebuilt. Someone she no longer understood. In the end, they agreed. Shared custody. 50/50ths. Week on, week off. I walked out of that meeting not with a victory, but with something better. Balance. The next wave came a few weeks later. By then, I'd launched my business. Quietly. No fanfare. Just a website, a local listing, and a simple tagline. Built with integrity. Word spread fast. The lake house clients loved the work. They posted before and after photos. Tagged my business. Recommended me in community Facebook groups. One night, Kyle and I went out for burgers. Same spot we used to go to when he was little. We sat outside under heat lamps, greasy napkins stacking up as we laughed about a dog that barked at his reflection in a passing car. He said, Mom says your business isn't real. She said it's just a phase. I paused, then smiled. That's so. He nodded. But then she saw your flyer at the grocery store and got really quiet. I didn't reply, just sipped my drink. Karen had always loved image, reputation, appearances. To her, success wasn't about stability, it was about control. She didn't care if we had money as long as she controlled how it was spent. And she definitely didn't expect me to build something without her approval. But I did, brick by brick. That's when the final domino fell. I got a call from Kyle's school. They were holding a parent panel for local business owners. role models who could speak to kids about hard work, entrepreneurship, and building a life from scratch. They wanted me. Apparently, Kyle had submitted my name. I said yes. The night before the event, I found a note in Kyle's backpack. Folded, messy handwriting. Dad, I'm proud of you. I brag about you all the time. You're the best man I know. I stared at it for a long time. I had already won. Long before Karen realized it. Long before the judge signed any papers. Because revenge, when done right, doesn't need fireworks. Just follow through. But I wasn't done yet. Not entirely. Karen still hadn't learned. She had her claws in the one place I hadn't touched, our old joint account. The one I'd stopped contributing to when I left, but still technically co-owned. I'd left it open for one reason: leverage. In early January, after we settled custody and finalized legal separation, I had Sharon send a formal notice, an offer to split the account and close it permanently. She didn't respond. Instead, she drained the rest. I watched it happen, transaction by transaction. A $900 boutique charge, a $600 wellness retreat, $400 for gifts around the holidays. Not for Kyle, either. I knew his gifts came from me. I didn't confront her. I waited. Then, with Sharon's help, I filed a formal claim. Financial misappropriation of joint marital assets post-separation. Technically, what she did was legal, but unethical. And judges don't like unethical. We scheduled a hearing. Karen showed up with the same tight smile and overconfident stride. But her lawyer? Different guy. Younger. Less polished. Clearly a discount choice. She didn't see it coming. Sharon walked the judge through everything. The timing of the charges, the proof that I'd requested account closure in good faith, Karen's failure to reply, and the obvious intent to drain funds out of spite. The judge nodded, took notes, and then ordered her to repay half, $3,600, in monthly installments. With interest. She exploded. This is ridiculous. He left me. The judge didn't even flinch. And you retaliated financially. That's not how this works, Ms. Green. When we left the courthouse, Karen chased me down the steps. You planned this, she hissed. I stopped, turned to face her. No, I said. You did. I just held up a mirror. She opened her mouth, but I was already walking away. No more lectures. No more pleading. No more explanations. The last piece of the past clicked into place. And I left it behind. Months passed. Spring arrived. Kyle spent his weeks with me building things, small projects, garage shelves, doghouses for the neighbors. He even helped design my new business cards. One morning, we sat on the porch. He sipped his orange juice. I drank my coffee. He said, "You're happier now." I nodded. "Yeah, I am." He leaned back. "I think I am too." I smiled. "Good." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you think Mom will ever change?" I didn't lie. "I think she'll be whoever she chooses to be," I said. "But we don't have to be who we were." He looked down at the birdhouse, now weathered with age, still hanging from the porch. He said, "Thanks for not giving up." And in that moment, every bruise from every year before faded just a little more. Because I didn't get revenge by shouting. I didn't win by punishing her. I won by choosing myself. By stepping away from a house that didn't feel like home and building one that did. By walking away from the noise and becoming the man I used to be before life wore me down. By being a father, not out of obligation, but because I refused to let my son grow up thinking love looked like silence and sacrifice. So if you're reading this, sitting in your own quiet room, wondering if leaving makes you weak, it doesn't. It makes you honest. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you'll ever be. I ate my birthday cake in silence. But I built the rest of my life in peace.